so I just got back from New York City on a really awesome dive trip. I was diving the East River from Mammoth bones, and I have everything that we collected right here. Now, to explain why we were in New York City and why we were diving the East River for Mammoth bones, I've got to back up a couple days to tell the whole story. It all started with Joe Rogan when he had a guest on his podcast named John Reeves. Now, John Reeves goes by the Boneyard Alaska on Instagram, and he's got some really special property up in Alaska where he's actually got permafrost frozen over mammoth grave sites. He blasts them out with water jets, and they find all kinds of stuff, mainly some really awesome woolly mammoth tusks, jaws, teeth, and then the occasional carnivore. Almost everything that was living up there in the Ice Age, they've uncovered on this really special piece of property. So Joe Rogan was, of course, interested to talk about that, and during their conversation, he said he was going to start a bone rush because during the early 1900s, AMNH, the museum in New York City, got a hold of some of his company's collection. Now, the story goes that some of the bones somehow got discarded and dumped in the East River. This is where we come in. I thought, well, if anyone could go down there and identify these bones, it'd be somebody like me, someone who's seen lots of mammoth bones, chunks and pieces, because after so many years, this stuff would probably be turning to dust or breaking apart, and it's sometimes difficult to see even what a full giant tusk would have looked like if it's starting to crumble into pieces. I knew that I couldn't do this alone, so I thought, who can I call? Well, of course, my good friend Jake has gone all over the world treasure hunting. He finds everything. I know he's not scared to dive any water at all. He even comes to Florida and dives with me with alligators and snakes and all kinds of things in our river. And I knew that he'd be the person that could get us there. All right, so Jake, we have made it. We've got this is actually we're not using in this video, but we do have the boats, and seriously, they've been out surveying this site for a long time now. So they have all the data. We're gonna go check it out on the computers.
So 63rd, this is 65th Street. Yeah. 64th.
Geo-referenced point cloud data. So if you wanted to know where that rock is, we could tell you right where that rock is. We could put it.
All right, so we just got out to the dock. We've got the vessel back there, and it is really, really cold. The wind is adding to the cold. This is going to be pretty challenging when we come up out of the dive. It's going to be really, really windy and cold. So I'm glad we're using dry suits. That's going to be a big deal and a big game changer that we're using dry suits. So I'm going to go back. We're going to meet up with the team right back here, get our gear loaded. Jake and I have got a whole bunch of gear. We got to get it on the boat, and then we're going to get underway, and hopefully we find something today. All right, so we're passing the Statue of Liberty on the way to the dive site. Really cold out here, but we had to slow down because we're passing the Statue of Liberty. We're in New York City. We're here to dive for fossils. It's insane. I can't believe what's going to happen right now. We've been preparing for this for a little while. So it took a lot of effort, jumping on a plane last minute, a lot of money, a lot of resources. Of course, we've got the survey crew out here, and they've done even more before we got here. So the dive site's right behind us. We just got here. We're waiting for slack tide. The current right now is just ripping. You can't dive this. It would be foolish, dangerous, all that. But the good thing is about in an hour or so, the tide's going to start shifting the other way. When that happens, it's called slack tide. And there's a really narrow window we have where the current will pretty much be nothing, and then it'll start picking up gradually. That's our opportunity to jump in the water and see if there's anything on the bottom. All of the research, we know right where we're going to drop, and it's either going to be there or not. I don't think these other people hunting it, they're crawling all around, but our research and the surveying and all that's gone into it has really pinpointed where this treasure is going to be.
But you know, at the end of the day too, if these guys even went across the same spots that we're going across, you have right here one of the world's best eyes for fossil hunting. I'm really good at spotting rings and phones and things like that, but he has keened his eye on finding certain bones that you might not even think that would be a mammoth bone. So he's the man. So
well, thanks, man. I've got my dive gear here. We got the dry suit today because it's really cold, and I got just my regular scuba gear from Florida. I will be taking down a GoPro to see if we can film whatever's down there. I got a light. This is a big blue light. It's about 3,800 lumens, super bright. And then of course, I got a little collection bag. So if we get any little pieces of bone that we need to bring up to identify, I have that. If we have a big tusk or a big mammoth bone, what I'll do is I have a marker buoy with me. I'll tie it on the bone, I'll send it to the surface, and then we'll be able to go back and somehow excavate it. But we'll cross that bridge when it happens. So here we go. I'm keep gearing up, and then Jake and I are going to get in this water and see if we can find anything.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Woo!
So this is the bag of all the samples that I collected when I went to the bottom. Now, I didn't collect a ton of samples, but what I was sure to do was see what looked most like bone or what could be bone, and I tried to pick up different stuff along the entire length that we swam, giving me a big survey area. If there was indeed thousands of pounds of bone dumped anywhere in the vicinity, from what I've seen in Florida rivers diving mammoth grave sites, I would expect that there would be bone fragments literally everywhere on the bottom. And that's why we collected a few dozen samples here. Now, I did throw away some chunks that I could tell were obvious, just construction debris or natural rock, and I'm down to what's in this bag, which is stuff that I think potentially could be bone. There is one thing in here. It's a really old bottle, and that was just really cool because this is also rumored to be a medical dump site, and this is definitely a really old bottle, probably from the turn of the century, and so I picked that up. But the rest of these bone fragments, well, the rest of these rocks could be bone fragments, and now we have to see. So what I'm going to do is dump them out, cover them with a little bit of water, and soak them in vinegar. Vinegar does a really good job of beating off marine life and incrustation stuff. I use it when I go to Venice Beach to get the teeth clean when they have lots of barnacles and shells on them, and I'm pretty confident that this will actually get the outside incrustation off of these items so we can see if they're bone. So I'm going to dump this in, add a little water, give it a couple days to soak, and then we'll take a look. So it's funny, I thought we were going to need to soak these for a couple days, but the vinegar is really doing its job. The stuff is really coming off fast, and I think we can get a pretty good look at this stuff. From what I'm seeing so far, this was the piece right here that I was most interested in. I thought that this kind of looked like the interior of a bone, but actually, as the vinegar worked its way, I can see flake right here. It's really shiny, and this is definitely an indication that this is a type of rock. Is kind of flaking apart, definitely not bone. I really thought I was going to have a piece that was at least challenging, that I may have to cut it or even take it to the Florida Museum of Natural History to see if they could verify that it was bone. But just by looking at all these samples, I can tell right now that none of them actually are bone. It's pretty disappointing because I was hoping that there'd be one flake of bone. That would mean that the story could be true. It'd also mean that there could be more down there. Now, the other thing to think of is that we did only survey a very small area, so the bones could still be there, or even if the story had details that were slightly off. For example, maybe they dumped the bones just 100 yards upstream. We may not see any indications of where we dove in the East River. This dive was really challenging because the water was pushing 39 degrees, and I think what we're going to do is hold off till summertime when the waters warm up a little bit, get back up there with a team, and really cover a wider area to see if there are any bones. But for now, it looks like the mystery remains unsolved. So that's a wrap on everything. I guess there's no bone that we collected. Doesn't mean that there's not any bone down there. It just means that right where we looked, there wasn't anything. Be cool to get back there, take some more samples and analyze them to really put this to the test. But no matter what, I had a super fun trip. It was really awesome meeting back up with Jake and getting a dive in. I also had a great time with Rogers Surveying Company. Their whole team was fantastic. From beginning to end, they really showed us a great time in New York City, and they provided pretty much everything we needed to get to the river and dive it safely. That was my main focus when we went out there. I knew that this was a challenging dive, and it was going to be dangerous, and that we had to do it the right way, and they certainly came in through that. So check them out. I'll link them in the description below. If you like this video, please consider subscribing. I am going to be making a lot more videos coming up, and especially branching out into some different areas of treasure hunting, and I'm really excited, so stay tuned.